Hello my good fellas, today we are going to talk about Tom Hagen, what is actually known about him, how did Tom Hagen become part of the Corleone family, what happened to Tom after the events of the second film, and how was his fate in general. You will learn the details of Tom's life from all the books about the Corleone family. My name is Ivan Piatouski and you are watching Vano VHS. Tom Hagen was born in New York City in 1916. Although his father was a diligent woodworker, at the same time he was a heavy alcoholic. By the time Hagen was 11, his mother had caught an eye disease, which resulted in blindness, and died shortly thereafter of a STD. Devastated by grief, Tom's dad was drinking himself to death. Tom and his sister were sent to an orphanage, but Tom fled. Tom spent more than a year living alone on the street. The father of Tom was assassinated by Clemenza and Salvatore Tessio for undisclosed causes, most probably connected with gambling debts. When Sonny encountered a homeless Tom on the sidewalk, he brought him home and convinced his father to adopt him into the family. While Don never legally adopted him, Hagen considered Vito Corleone to be his true father. To a large extent, Vito's adoption of Hagen's boy is similar to the way Don himself was accepted by the Abandanda family. Following graduation from law school, Vito appeared to be more than eager to employ Tom. His German-Irish origins barred him from becoming an official mafia member. Regardless, Tom had immense power in the Corleone family during Vito's reign, for he was both Vito's lawyer and his entrusted counselor in the majority of cases. When the family's veteran consigliere Genco Abandanda had taken a serious disease, Hagen was promoted to the position of consigliere. Don Corleone made Hagen officially responsible for the post after Genco's demise, which made him the first non-Italian to occupy the high-profile position. Hagen's ascension led certain of the rival families to jokingly refer to Corleone as the Irish Gang, on account of Hagen's Irish origin. In 1945, Vito Corleone sends Hagen to Hollywood to persuade Jack Waltz, a prominent studio executive, in order to cast Johnny Fontane in the leading role in his upcoming film. Once Jack learned who exactly Hagen was working for, he asked him to his luxurious estate to show him his precious horse. Over dinner, when Hagen repeatedly offered to cast Fontane, Jack stormed out at him and declared that Johnny would never be given the role. Corleone's men later burst into Jack's horse stable and Rocco Lampone beheaded the horse and then placed the horse's severed head in Jack's bed. Immediately thereafter, the role was given to Johnny. The individual power of Tom started to diminish at almost the first assassination attempt on Vito, in spite of the fact that Solozzo and the rival families wished him to continue as consigliere. Well knowing that he was extremely tied with Sonny, they required his powers to persuade Sonny to take the drug deal, given that both he and Sonny realized its full potential. Nonetheless, Sonny's temper led him to disregard a majority of the tips Tom gave him and start a pricey mob fight. Hagen blamed himself when Sonny was shot. Once Michael took over as acting leader of the Corleones, he removed Hagen as consigliere, limiting him to handling the family's legal affairs. When Tom asks why he is out, Michael replies that he is merely not a wartime consigliere.
Why am I out? You're not a wartime consigliere, Tom.
Regardless of his restricted position, Tom cooperated closely with Michael in designing the massive slaughter of the other New York Dons. Directly after Michael officially becomes a Don, Tom is re-established in his original post. And Tom was still there when Michael relocated to Nevada, despite his slightly reduced role, which he was not comfortable with. He was excluded from negotiations with Hyman Roth. But then, following the assassination attempt on Michael's life, Hagen had been assigned by Michael as the acting Don as a mark of profound trust. Michael was aware that Tom was ignorant of a few things and consequently had no motive to oppose him. Hagen was essential in both ensuring the friendship of Senator Patrick Geary and in protecting Michael as his lawyer throughout the Senate hearings. The collapse in Cuba compelled Michael to suspend his ambition to be a legitimate businessman and move back into the shoes of Don Corleone. He also reappointed Tom as consigliere. Tom aided Michael in overpowering Roth. Michael tasked Tom with persuading ex-capo Frank Pentangeli to take his own life, shielding Michael and the family from his testimony for good. I've covered this in more detail in my other video, pay attention in the upper right hand corner. Now we are going to talk about the fate of the renowned consigliere narrated in The Godfather Returns, The Godfather Revenge and The Family Corleone. And the sponsor of this Vano VHS episode is Audible. Audiobooks are a great way to get a taste of a book without sitting down to read. You can listen to audiobooks in the car, at the gym, and you can read a book at any speed you want to finish reading faster. Audible offers an incredible selection of audiobooks of all genres. The best part is that the app has all those books we love so much. The Godfather, The Family Corleone, The Godfather's Revenge, Wise Guy, Hit 2 by Michael Mann, and many more. Remember when I told you about the special edition of The Godfather with the Coppola introduction? You can listen to it today. All you have to do is visit audibletrial.com/VanoVHS and ask for a trial. New users can try Audible for free for 30 days. Goodfellas, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I love books, but I don't always have time to read a paper version. But with Audible I can always enjoy The Godfather on the road or while driving. I really hope you will enjoy it too. Visit audibletrial.com/VanoVHS and use a trial. All links are in the description. As an Audible associate, I earn from qualifying purchases, at no cost to you. The Godfather Returns pictures Hagen's part as consigliere in the first few years after Michael takes over as family leader. In the novel, Hagen once again is represented as Michael's right-hand man and is instrumental in Corleone's dealing with the powerful political Xi family, the Kennedy counterpart. Hagen made a deal with patriarch Mikey Xi that the Corleone family would support his son James to be elected president on the proviso that his younger son Danny, the newly elected attorney general, would take a softer stance on organized crime. In the meantime, Hagen targets a political career, standing for the Nevada House of Representatives, with the final objective of being governor of the state. However, he is unsuccessful due to his association with Corleone, so he abandons all hopes of taking public office. Hagen is also shown covering for Michael's brother Fredo when he murders a man in San Francisco and rescuing him from imprisonment when he attacks his wife's lover. Hagen and Fredo get into a fierce dispute over Fredo's stupidity and Hagen's blind devotion to Michael. When Michael kills his brother, Hagen speculates about what really occurred, but stays willfully oblivious. Back in 1961, after a botched conspiracy by the disloyal ex-capo Nick Geraci against Corleone, Louis Russo asks Tom to his gambling house in the Illinois countryside with the intent to assassinate him. Russo, Hagen, a peddler, and two of Russo's security men took a gondola trip to his man-made lake. On the trip, as part of Michael's vendetta, Hagen murdered one man by strangling him with his belt, while the peddler hit the other with his paddle. Hagen then personally shot Russo and dropped the corpses in the lake. The Godfather's Revenge. In 1963, Tom was accused of murdering his mistress, whose murder was arranged by the family's force. It ruined any chance he had of a career in politics, despite the fact that he was justified. His wife Teresa briefly left him after she found out of the affair, but they made up shortly afterwards. In 1964, when vacationing with his family in Florida, Tom was doing business for Michael at the DeVille Hotel in Miami. He walked away and was surprised by Nick Geraci, who had been lurking in the backseat of Tom's car and had been secretly stalking him for several days. He made Tom travel to a swamp-filled countryside and then struck him down with his gun. When Tom recovered, he was aware that his arms and feet were tied together with duct tape and his vehicle was drowning in the swamp and quickly flooding with thick green-brown water. As he was awaiting his death, Tom reminisced about some of his most powerful memories. He passed away with happy flashbacks in his mind as the water swallowed Tom and the car entirely. While his body was never discovered, Nick Geraci sent Michael Corleone a dead baby alligator with Tom Hagen's wallet in his mouth to show that Tom Hagen was sleeping with alligators. Tom was 54 at the time. The Family Corleone. The novel is set before the events of The Godfather. Tom Hagen is pictured as a young student. He spent the night with Kelly O'Rourke, not realizing that she was Luca Brasi's crush. Thanks only to Don's intervention, Tom wasn't killed by Brasi in reprisal for it. Who really killed Tom Hagen in The Godfather? The third movie doesn't reveal exactly who was behind Hagen's murder, but the book The Godfather's Revenge finally sets the record straight, and today we will learn the name of the killer. My name is Ivan Piatouski and you're watching Vano VHS. In order to avoid redundancy, I will clarify straight away. The events you're about to hear take place in the novel The Godfather's Revenge. The novel centers on Michael's guilt over taking the life of his brother Fredo. Secondary plot lines include Nick Geraci's plans for revenge against Corleone. By the way, in the next video you will learn exactly how Tom Hagen really died, so make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. For those who have only seen the movies or have only read the original book, I will explain on my fingers who Nick Geraci is and why he held a grudge on Corleone. His figure is really essential to comprehend, for none other than Nick will take Tom Hagen's life in the future. But first things first. Geraci dedicated himself to boxing as a youngster, ultimately becoming a classified heavyweight boxer nicknamed Ace Geraci. In Cleveland, through his contacts, he met Salvatore Tessio and became involved with his team. Engaging in contract fights for Tessio, at the same time he functioned as an enforcer while moving up the ranks. In addition, with his help, Legato beat the young man who attacked Bonacera's daughter. After Tessio's treachery against the Corleone family was exposed, Geraci was commanded to kill Sal in order to prove his loyalty. Geraci replaced Tessio as capo to Don Michael Corleone. Completely loyal to the Corleone family, Geraci resented Michael, believing that the latter failed to deserve the Don's chair. Geraci's true identity came to light when he was controlling a plane carrying the Dons of Los Angeles and San Francisco. The plane crashed into the lake water and both Dons perished, but Geraci nevertheless made it out unharmed. After coming to his senses in the hospital, Geraci discovered that Michael Corleone's sabotage was the cause of the plane wreck. Geraci had been made a pawn in an elaborate plan to undermine the positions of the Chicago and Cleveland families. Geraci vowed to get even with Michael Corleone and stayed in the shadows until he could work out a way to fight back against his sworn enemy. In the years that followed, Geraci managed to elude Michael Corleone by constantly changing asylums, conducting denigration activities against Michael Corleone and Tom Hagen, and turning himself into the epitome of fear for the Corleone family. Geraci sought to exploit the commission vote to pressure Michael to resign, thus putting the running of the Corleone family's business in his own hands. However, his plot failed, and he was turned in by his accomplices. Subsequently, he was caught and murdered by Eddie Paradise, Michael Corleone's new capo. Hello my good fellas! How did Tom Hagen really die? The Godfather's Revenge novel finally reveals the true story, and today you will learn what the truth is. My name is Ivan Piatouski and you're watching Vano VHS. By the way, in the next video you will learn exactly how Tom Hagen became friends with Sonny Corleone. It's a terrific story, I'm serious, so make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Back in the 60s, during a vacation with his family in Florida, Tom conducted business for Michael in Miami. Returning from one business meeting, Hagen suddenly sensed a gun pressed against his head. From the rearview mirror, Nick Geraci was looking at him. Tom started to slow down and turn to the side of the road. Geraci commanded, "Don't stop." Hagen looked in the mirror again. Geraci gave Tom a friendly pat on the shoulder. "Wanna guess what $1,000 would do, you greedy Irish bastard?" Tom couldn't believe this was happening to him. He touched his neck. His pulse, oddly enough, was almost normal. German-Irish, Hagen corrected. I apologized, German-Irish bastard. Hagen kept going. There had to be a way out. Wow, Geraci teased. You're wondering if you ought to get a revolver right now, aren't you? But then you remember what a wimp you are compared to me, so that's out of the question. Then you get the idea. I might just persuade that stupid guy to make peace and lay down his arms. Unfortunately, this is such heresy that even a hypocrite like you can't hold back a smile. You are smart, Tom said dryly. Yes, agreed Geraci. When I was on the run, I followed a traveling circus, worked for them as a mind reader. Turned out I had a talent. Tom began unconsciously shaking his hand in response to such a pathetic sense of humor. Nick poked his muzzle harder. Geraci put down the gun, and Hagen looked in the mirror and immediately felt a blow to the head. Everything was flooded with white light. When Tom came to, his temples were pounding, the pain so unbearable that he could barely open his eyes. Something strange was happening to his hearing, as if Tom were in a cave under a waterfall. He realized he was still in his car, strapped into the front seat. He couldn't see anything. Hagen shook his head to get rid of the stupefaction. Because of the dizzying pain, he didn't immediately feel the water or hear the splash. Tom wasn't under the waterfall, he was underwater. The flow was pouring through all 4 windows. He had probably been here quite recently, and not for long, wrapped in duct tape, from the waist down to the shoulders, ankles and knees wrapped too. Tom began to scream and thrash, which increased the excruciating headache. The water rose above the seats, above his navel, above his heart. He kept struggling. The tape around his ankles relaxed. The Buick's electrical system hissed. Before headlights went out, a big black snake swarmed behind the windshield, but Tom's heart held out too. Tom didn't give up. He could clearly feel the tape peeling off everywhere. The water reached his chin. Hagen threw his head back against the roof and prepared to take a deep breath. It would all work out. It's a question of willpower, and Tom had no shortage of willpower. The back of his head wet, the moment to inhale. Time. He began to draw in air slowly, evenly, with his lungs. Suddenly his throat became constricted, his chest quivered, and his head tilted sharply forward. A coughing fit. Tom gulped for air with his mouth, and there was no air. Hagen heard it was if drowning was the most peaceful death. Nothing in Tom Hagen's shuddering body resembled peacefulness. He tried to stop coughing and not gulp water, but his body betrayed him. He has to accept death. With willpower he forced himself to accept it, because otherwise he would not be able to think what he wanted. In his imagination, he drew a picture of his family, and for one terrible and beautiful moment looked into the eyes of Theresa, his sons, lawyer Frank and Andrew, a future priest, and his daughters, Christina, who would grow up to be a beauty, and Gina. Then Tom lost control of himself, and his life began to go out. But it wasn't his wife he was thinking about, it was Sonny. He'd seen Sonny as a kid, in that alley. Tom took Sonny under his arm. Sonny asked his new friend where he lived. Tom just shook his head. Sonny asked what was wrong with Tom's eyes, and he said he didn't know, some kind of infection. His mother had the same thing, she died. Sonny asked where the father was, and Tom didn't have the heart to say that the father had drunk himself to death. Well, you and me, we are brothers now. The last image in Hagen's mind was the huge plate of spaghetti that Corleone's mother had placed before him that day, the aroma of the buttery tomato sauce, the sound of her voice telling him to eat. He passed away with happy flashbacks in his mind. While his body was never discovered, Nick Geraci sent Michael Corleone a dead baby alligator with Hagen's wallet in his mouth to show that Tom Hagen was sleeping with alligators. Tom was 54 at the time. Hello my good fellas. As we recall, Tom Hagen loved and respected Michael, but genuinely was devoted the most to Santino. So how did Sonny Corleone meet Tom Hagen in The Godfather? Let's find out. My name is Ivan Piatouski and you're watching Vano VHS. Tom had no real friendship with Sonny Corleone, at least not at first. They made up that story and were telling it to anyone, even themselves. Everyone was told that Sonny had only taken Tom to the house because it had been a freezing cold day and the neighborhood was dangerous. In fact, Sonny and his crew of two older boys head straight onto a crime street in an Irish area, a terrible spot. But Tom already knew where to hide and how to get food from these trash garbage cans. There was a true snowstorm. At the corner a man was peddling spring knives. The man was actually a squint-eyed pimp. When the boys questioned how much the knife cost, the man stated that he didn't sell it to children. They claimed they weren't children, and the man burst out laughing and said that only a child would claim he wasn't a child. The pimp pointed out that he didn't sell to the Italians, and when the boys started to snap back at the insult, he drew a knife and grabbed Sonny by the throat. The boys rushed away. The man selling knives and girls was somebody else, and Tom was aware of it. Hagen watched him cut up his hookahs, but he didn't rape them. The man with the slanted eyes would find the boys in need and made them suck on half a sandwich, then put a knife to their throats and never bothered to look for a sandwich. Hagen kept away from him, even though at times he was raving with hunger. Hagen thought he was still lucky that he felt disgusted when he saw this man. The pimp was now dragging Sonny down the road. Tom wasn't thinking, he was acting. With a yell he leaped out from under the porch steps, grabbed the plank and smacked the man in the back of the head. Everyone was just lucky. Sonny certainly was, but so was Hagen and the whole neighborhood. The plank had a nail in it that pierced the neck of the pimp. Blood splatter colored the falling snow. The pimp was lucky too, because his life was miserable and it was over. Then the boys started kicking the slant-eyed pimp together and then stopped hard breathing. They glanced around and saw that there were lots of witnesses. No one would grieve for the man with the slanted eyes, and one by one they turned and walked away. Tom and Sonny looked at each other and, strangely enough, laughed, spilling out all their emotions with laughter, strong, painful, because of the cold air and hard work. They weren't ashamed in the slightest of tears, but they didn't start crying. Then Tom looked into Sonny's eyes and said like a father that there are things that have to be done, and you just do them and never tell anyone. You don't try to justify them, you just get them done. Then you forget. My name is Santino Corleone, Sonny said and held out his hand. A steam was rising from the wound on the pimp's neck. Tom Hagen. Hagen introduced himself, and they shook hands. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss future Godfather videos. Support the channel by buying the Godfather merch. All the links are in the description. Make sure to watch the full Godfather playlist on the right. My name is Ivan Piatouski and you are watching Vano VHS.